Where's all the guys?
I've got one here with me. He's eating, so he doesn't want to be on camera.
And mine's going to come in any minute wanting
Any,
his
okay, very cool. I thought there was a clause out there in this group that says no guys allowed.
Ladies don't.
Ladies' night. Well, look at this. Some of you guys I know, some I don't, which is really weird to me, but very, very cool. Priscilla, can you make me a co-host?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing right now, actually. I was going to make you a co-host right now.
Thank you. So, Cassandra, I know. Kim, I know. Priscilla, I'm not sure if I've met you.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I should say I know that.
Okay. Well, nice to meet you.
Me too.
And then I see someone in my top right-hand corner, but I'm not able to see them. Well, I got to tell you, before I sort of get into my story and all that stuff, I am really excited to be on with this group. You know, a few years back, I didn't know Priscilla. And over the years, Priscilla has become one of my favorite people in the whole entire universe. And I joke with her a lot because I just think that I think that her energy is, you know, it's just infectious. And I think Optavia is better because of you, Priscilla. And I honestly think that over the next couple of years, you and this group that's here are going to impact thousands of lives. And I've seen it happen, but I'm really, really excited. So it's really fun for me to be on with this group. What's really unique about this is I was looking at one of my old training videos from like 2013 or something like that. And one of my old Zoom, this was maybe before even Zoom came out, but I think we only had like 7 people on. And, you know, now there's like thousands of people, but it's kind of cool because I remember a smaller intimate group. So that's why I said this was weird that I don't know some of you guys, because we used to know every single person, but now it's just kind of all over the place. So my name is Jamil, you guys. For any of you guys that don't know me, I have been coaching for almost 7 years now as we move into 2019. This is really exciting for me. You know, I don't get a chance to talk to, you know, everyone these days, but when I'm brought on these more intimate team calls is really exciting for me. You know, I really found Optavia looking for physical health. I didn't know about coaching. When I didn't know about coaching, I wasn't excited about coaching. I didn't think it was something that I would ever do. In fact, I thought that I was above coaching. And I didn't think that it would be something that I could necessarily excel in. So I just really been at a point in my life to where I was looking for physical health. We got pregnant and had our first child in 2011. And I just started putting on a tremendous amount of weight. At the same time, we were really struggling as brand new parents, and we had only been married for a couple of years, and we were having a lot of struggles within our relationship. And so I thought that, you know, getting myself healthier physically would at least bring some sort of comfort and some sort of stability, or maybe just finally make me feel good again after not feeling good for a few years there. And I knew about, back then, our program was called Take Shape for Life. I knew about it. I knew about it for about 4 months before the time I actually sat down with my coach to hear more about it. She had been reaching out to my wife and was suggesting or trying to give information to my wife about starting program. And my wife did what a lot of people do, is she was just ignoring the messages left and right. And she would come to me and say, "Hey, Becky's reaching out to me again." And I would say, "Well, go talk to her." And she would say, "I don't want to talk to her." And this went on for about 4 months, and Becky would shoot me little messages and things, but I wasn't in the space. That's why I believe timing's everything. And then one day the timing was right, and I was just at a day to where I was frustrated, and I shot her a message and says, "You know, want to know a little bit more about what you're doing. So that's how we got started on this journey. I sat down at her house. She told me about what she was doing. I said, if my wife does it with me, then we'll go all in and we'll do it. And that's what we did. And within a week, I knew this was for me. I hadn't felt that good in such a long time, Priscilla. You don't even understand. I mean, I felt so good, you guys. I was just a client. And at that point, I was trying to find ways to make more money. And so I was day trading online. So I would get up really early and I would day trade and I would look at all these stocks and I would lose a ton of money. And after my first week on program, I was like, I think that this is a publicly traded company. I looked up the ticker and I had felt so good that I took like the last little bit of our savings and I dumped it into Medifast stock. And I never intended on coaching. I hadn't felt that good in such a long time. And after 6 weeks of being on program, I was started at over 200 pounds. And after 6 weeks, dropped down to about 168, which I didn't even have. I think about it these days that I didn't even believe in myself enough to even think that that was a possibility for myself. And so this was the first time that I started to believe in myself. And after a while, and of course, what happens. Lots of people started noticing. Lots of people started asking. And I became a coach after referring about 13 people to my coach. And after saying I wasn't going to coach about 20 times, well, I started coaching. And the first 2 weeks were a blast, but they were really hard. And so I quit after about 2 weeks of coaching and didn't have the anticipation of coming back. But after about a month off, we were trying to figure out how we could save our marriage at this point. And big part of our struggles was financial struggles. And so after speaking to my wife and trying to come up with ideas on how to earn more money for the family, almost as an afterthought, I said, well, what about that coaching thing that I did a couple months ago? I only did it for a couple weeks and earned over $1,000. What if you start doing that? I actually told her, what if she starts doing it? Because I wasn't interested in doing it. And she said that she would do it, and if we did it together. And so that's why I came back. And after about maybe a week of doing that, she said she wasn't interested in doing the coaching thing anymore. And so now I'm sitting here kind of with, this business, and I had already gone back to our mentors and said that we were in and we were going to do it. And so, now I'm just kind of got to figure it out. And then that's when the miracle happened for me. The miracle happened when my coach invited me to go to what we call national convention. So I would write that down for you guys. National convention happens every July. And it's to me, one of the most incredible things that you can experience. It really is an experience. And I went, and that's when I start to understand what this actually was and what the opportunity was. And I saw it right away. And I got convicted, and I knew what could happen. And from that moment on, no one's ever had to say, no one's ever sort of had to pump me up about sharing this. I saw it in 2012, and I knew what it could become. And I've been very, very on fire since then. And it's really exciting for me to see this thing spread the way that it's been spreading. So, Priscilla?
Thank you. Well, that is awesome. I love your story, and and I love that we all come from different backgrounds, and I love that we all have an opportunity to make whatever we want out of our lives with this kind of business, and that's why I'm so passionate about this. Like, there's a few of us on right now, but we all come from different backgrounds, but we all have the same opportunity, to create and design our lives around whatever matters most to us. So many times we're conditioned to think that corporate is the only route. We're conditioned to think that you just have to go to school, get a degree, get out, and then fight for a job. And we're conditioned to think that way. And then guess what? We're drowning in school loans. That's me right here, literally drowning in school loans. And then you're working to pay the government back. you know, and that's just the kind of life that we're conditioned to think. We're conditioned to think we have to function within society. But here we are. And now with this kind of business, you just can create and design what you want. And so that's why I'm so passionate, because all of us here can one day, you know, be chilling in Hawaii. I always tell that to you guys, you know, drinking your pina coladas and having that money drop in there, you know? So it's awesome to see Jamil. You know, I've seen him work and I've seen him grow this business, and I admire him so much. And that's why I feel so blessed that he gets, you know, he gets to share with us a story. So I'm going to ask him a few questions so that, you know, we can hear him. He already actually answered my first question, which was, why did he start coaching? Right. But my second question to you, Jamil, is, what were some of the concepts or fears you had in the beginning? You know, there's a lot of brand new coaches here, and there's a lot of us that have a lot of concepts and fears, you know, that hold us back from really making, you know, going out there and just being bold about what we believe and bold about Optavia. So what were some of the concepts and fears you had in the beginning, and what did you have to do to overcome those?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. So I will sort of answer your first question a little bit more specifically too. So the question is, why did I start coaching? You know, when I started coaching, I think of my coaching journey in many different ways, because the reason why I'm coaching now is completely different why I started coaching back then. When I first made the decision to start coaching, it was simply to expand our finances. That was it. Like when I first bought my coaching kit, which back then, by the way, it wasn't a kit. It was like, we get really cool stuff now, but back then it wasn't like cool stuff. But the only reason why I started coaching back then is because I referred all these people to my coach, and literally they were still texting me and asking me all these questions, and they weren't even talking to her. And so she sat me down and said, dude, what are you doing? Like, why am I getting all the benefits from this when you're doing all the work? You might as well just sign up to coach. So I literally signed up to coach, and I was just selling food. I wasn't actually coaching. Now, when I came back to coaching and I went to that convention, that's when I actually started coaching. So why did I start coaching there? Well, I had an awakening, and I don't know if anyone's ever had an awakening, but it was just very, very clear to me how badly people were hurting in the world. And I heard enough stories at that convention. I had hugged enough people. I had my heart connected with so many people, and I heard so many evidences of people being reborn. And I thought, my gosh, how amazing would it be to actually be part of that miracle working process? So that was one, because I always struggled with like these two sides of me, wanting to do very, very, very well in the world and wanting to really serve people and wanting to do good, but also wanting to be very, very successful financially. And those two always clashed, Priscilla. I thought if I was going to do one, I had to suffer on the other hand. And if I was going to do very well over here, this meant that something wasn't going right over here. Maybe I wasn't a good person, or I wasn't willing to really serve people at the highest level, at the highest calling. And when I was at that convention, I saw for the first time that I could actually do them both together. And it, one didn't mean that, you know, that I wasn't sort of the person that I wanted to be. And so that's when I started coaching for real, as I call it, because I wanted to be part of the process of helping people break change and start to break loose. And that was very enticing. And I wanted to build something. See, I saw at that first convention, I was 31 years old. I saw that if I spent the next 10 years going all in on this, like I did at my day job, that not only would thousands of lives change, but I could actually start leaving a legacy for my family and for other people's families. And I also saw that I could leave something to, at that point, it was just my son. And if you grew up the way that I grew up, which I grew up on welfare, my father was never there when I was a little boy, I always said that I would do something amazing if I ever had a son. And so that's what really drove me to coach at such a strong level. So why I started coaching the first time to really, once I come back from convention to now, they've all sort of changed. You know, now I look at what we do, it's so much on a global level, which is completely different than I looked at it when I first started coaching. So fears, I mean, where should I start? I mean, I had all the typical fears that everyone has. And I had a lot of concepts, tons of concepts. You know, one, I just purged my Facebook when I first started coaching. And so it was very hard for me to live out loud because I was so scared of what people would say about me or what they might think about me. Or is Jamil, you know, doing this thing? Is he trying to get me? So those were very real for me, you know. Also, some of my concepts was I truly didn't believe at the beginning. Like when I would run into, I would feel like I'm out there and I'm spreading my, you know, the message and spreading my story. But I didn't feel like people were coming at the rate that I really wanted them to come. And so I rationalized that with, well, I'm such a young guy, and young people can't do this business because the majority of my circle were not, you know, on high blood pressure medications or high cholesterol, or they weren't older. And so I thought that that, you know, younger people wouldn't be interested in this. Another fear that I had was I felt like at times that what we did in our program was too expensive. And so that was a very real concept for me at the beginning. Now it's nothing has changed. In fact, our programs become much, much, much more expensive than it was in 2012. But now I actually feel like it's way too cheap. I literally feel like everything that we do it too cheap. I believe that becoming a coach is too inexpensive. I believe that for what we offer clients, they should have to pay way more. I believe that from what coaches get, they should have to pay way more. And so now everything is basically the same, but my viewpoints about it is different. Another fear that I had was when I made the decision to finally leave my full-time job and attack coaching full-time. That was a really big fear for me was what's going to happen if I leave the security or stability of my full-time job and benefits and things like that. Another fear was, you know, it took about 2 years for my wife to actually be fully on board with me coaching. That's 2 years. So now when I hear about folks and maybe their spouses and all that supportive, I kind of chuckle because I it was 2 years of fights and arguments and things like that to because of the vision that I had to produce freedom, you know, and now, you know, 6 years later, that was all necessary. But at the beginning, you know, that was very real and a big fearful. I was scared about everything. I was scared about my business coaches judging me. So I didn't even do my first health assessment with my support team for 3 months. So I know some of you guys are new and you guys are knocking these things out like that first day. Not me. It took 3 months and it took me doing a whole bunch of health assessments and messing up. I was willing to mess up more than to have my coach on and just correct me because I had everything I had to be perfect. And I didn't want anyone to judge me, not even my own support team. So I didn't do my first health assessment for a long time. For 3 months, it took me, kept going back to my coach saying, why aren't these people signing up? And she would say, have you had me on the call? And I would say, no. And she would say, well, maybe you want to have me on the call. And I would hang up. And I would text her again out of frustration. How come these people aren't signing up? Have you had me on the call? No. Well, when would you like to have me on the call? And this was a dance for 3 months until finally my desire for being successful overrid my desire for being scared and having her on. And so I finally had her on, and within 1, 2 calls, she shifted a couple things. My propensity for thinking that this was too expensive was rubbing off on people. And I was literally giving people a disease they didn't even have, but I didn't know that. And so when she got on with me, she actually coached me. She changed a couple things. She suggested a couple things. I started doing it. And when you know it worked. So probably all the traditional fears that people have, I had. But I do remember the distinct moment where I told myself I wasn't going to let fear dictate my life anymore. So I was maybe coaching Priscilla for, this was in December. Um, this was in December 2012. So I've been coaching maybe for 6 months or something. And we took a trip up to Pismo Beach, California, and just Amanda and I. And I had already had these amazing, crazy things happen already in the business, but I was still very fearful. And we stopped off at it was like a Target or Walmart or something like that to pick up some snacks for our weekend stay. And while I was in there, I saw this woman on one of those motorized scooters, and man, she was just, you could just see it in her face. She was uncomfortable. She didn't feel good. She was probably, I don't know, a good 300 pounds or something. She had these kids. I don't know if they're grandkids or maybe her kids, but they were with her, helping her get things off the shelf and put it in the cart and all this stuff. And I just felt this strong calling, almost like this voice that was saying, go talk to her, at least go say hi, like let her know what it is that what you do, and let her know your story. And I was scared. Well, what's she gonna think about me? She's gonna think I'm calling her fat, like all this stuff, right? And so so I'm in the store and I'm just kind of following her like a creeper, like trying to build up the confidence to say something. And I would go aisle after aisle. And then eventually I would step back and I would see her way down at the other aisle. And I'm down here and I'm just watching her. And we would just be walking, and I didn't say anything. And I walked out to the car, and I'm just sitting there in the car with my wife, and she goes, what's wrong? And I said, I feel like I was supposed to talk to that woman. And so she says, go talk to her. I was like, yeah, you're right. And I get out of the car and I go run back in the store, and I'm looking for her because I'm going to say something. And I never found her. And so I came back to the car, and I just broke down in tears, and I was crying. And I think my wife thought that I was crying because, I don't know, maybe I didn't talk to the woman, but really I was crying because I was tired of being scared. And I was tired of letting fear dictate what I did in my life, and the decisions that I made. I didn't want to feel that anymore. I wanted to finally be in control. So I promised myself that day in the car that I wasn't going to let fear drive me anymore. And so now I live by a different philosophy. I'm still getting nervous, but I know how to manage it a lot better. So I think fear is one of those things that I see people have the God-given ability, Priscilla, to do so much more than what they're actually doing, but they don't understand how to control that. That's one of the reasons why I love coaching, and I hope that everyone decides to build an integrated presidential director business. Because in order to do that, you're going to have to change a lot. And probably the biggest thing you're going to have to change is how we decide we want to choose the way that we think. And this is why I believe so much in what we do, especially when it comes to mental and emotional well-being. Because as we stay here long enough, and hopefully as our goals grow and we decide to stretch a little bit more, we're going to have to learn how to control those sorts of things and really start to control our minds, which I've fallen in love with.
Man, that's powerful.
Next question.
That's pretty powerful, though. That's good. I see everybody's faces and everybody's like, oh my gosh. And it's true what you said, Jamil. Like, I remember the first day when I started coaching, I was like, easy peasy, I can sell a product. I was the number one banker in my bank, not a big deal. And as I've been doing this, the growing and stretching as a person and how it just affects my marriage and my friendships and everything is just so powerful. And that's what I love about this thing. Personal development is just amazing. So how do you deal with disappointments, right? So many of us get to, we're going to, as we do explore calls, it's not in our time, and we look to serve people and not sell a product, going to that. So when you get no's, or you don't get people showing up, or, people are just not there, how do you deal with these disappointments?
Well, okay, you asked, so we'll get into it. I would take notes during this time for sure. We're about to get a whole bunch of free stuff. Think about why I quit after 2 weeks. So the question is, why did I quit? Disappointments and discouragement. My clients, in 2 weeks, we brought on about 15, 16 clients. And I don't think there was one client that did things the way that I hoped that they would do things. See, in my program, I had no deviations. I didn't even think about deviating. It was so sort of simplistic for me. And I would eat the same thing if I needed to over and over and over again, because I made the decision, Priscilla, to take back my health. Same thing when I made the decision to start coaching. I made the decision that we were going to do something amazing. And so disappointment, discouragement comes first and foremost when we set expectations and they're not met. When we make up what we believe is supposed to happen, and when they're not met the way that we just conjured up a picture of how it's supposed to go, now we start to get a little bit discouraged. So that's what happened when my clients started deviating, when they weren't actually following our simplistic program the way that we say they're supposed to follow it. When they would say, I have the desire to lose 50 pounds, and then the next week I would call them and they're at Costco getting one of those big Costco pizzas. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. I didn't understand why you would do that. When I would have a coaching partner come on and say, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and then they were like me, and they literally wouldn't even do the simplest things like set up a practice call. So it was disappointing and it was frustrating. And so one of the best things that's ever happened to me, and I'm so glad that God has gifted me with the mentorship that we have, is because I needed to start becoming more conscious first and foremost. I need to start understanding the way that I was choosing to see the world and choosing to think. I didn't even know that that was necessarily a choice. So one of the things that that the women that taught me was they never had to say things like, what are you doing? Are you in action today? Things like that. I'm in action because I have intrinsic motivation. I made the decision to do this. What I needed help was how to control my mind, my thoughts, and my emotions. So one of the things that my mentor, Karen Elstrom, would always say, and please write this down, she would say things like, it's interesting that you choose to see it that way. It's interesting that you choose to see it that way. And she would say things like, is that thought serving you? Is that thought serving you? And she would explore with me, what did I want? What did I want to create? What was important for me? What do I want to do for my family? What sort of legacy that I want to leave? Who do I want to help? Who do I want to support? How much money did I want to make? What did I want? And she would say, and I would come to her all the time, frustrated, disappointed, discouraged. Well, this coach isn't doing this. This client isn't doing this. I've spoken to everyone. Well, in reality, I only talked to 5 people, but I talked to everyone. No one's signing up. And this was my conversation with her all the time. And she would say, okay. Well, is that thought serving you? Is that helping you, Jamil, get closer to where you desire to be? Is it keeping you the same, or is it pushing you further away? And if it's not getting you closer, then how can you change that thought right now to a thought that actually serves you, that serves your virtues, that serves your goals, that serves your happiness, that serves your life? How can you think about that same thing, in a different way that actually serves you? And I would say, I don't know. And she would say, yes, you do. And I would say, no, truly, I don't. And she would say, well, if you did know, what do you think you would say? And she would force me to do the mental push-ups. And sometimes the conversation would stop right there, and she would say, think about it and call me back. Sometimes I was able to switch that thought to a self-serving thought right there on the phone. Sometimes it wouldn't come to me for 2 weeks, but she never gave me the answers. And so this is where it starts. So how do you start to change discouragement and disappointment? First thing is you become aware that you're even having thoughts that are not in line with how you actually want to feel and who you want to be. It's called becoming conscious. That's the first part, is becoming aware. Second part is learning how to start questioning your thoughts. It's called metacognition, to where you start thinking about the things that you're thinking about. The next thing is you start asking yourself questions. You literally start talking to yourself. Is this thought serving me? No. Is it helping me get closer to my goals? No. How can I change this then to actually inspires me and helps me get closer to my goals? This is called doing the work. This is called doing the mental push-ups. So that's one. Thank you so much. So that's one way, Priscilla, is starting to understand, starting to become more conscious. Because we learn, you'll see a lot of us coaches do this here. We wear wristbands to say this here: E plus R equals O. So the E are the events that happen. None of us will ever be immune to these events that happen out in the world. Whether our spouse decides to leave us, whether they decide to maybe step out on us and have a relationship with someone else, what can you do about it? Nothing. It's already been done. Maybe one of our animals gets hit by a car and they pass away. That's called an event. Maybe a client decides to push their order off. That's called an event. Maybe it decides to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. That's called an event. Maybe our children get sick. That's called an event. Maybe someone breaks into my home and they steal everything that's in here. That's called an event. Events are like the wind that's going to blow on us all. None of us are going to ever escape them. It's just part of life. Things happen, right? So what does shape our life is actually not the events, but the response. How do we choose to respond to these things? Why is it that someone can experience death and actually get inspired and motivated and figure out a way to go change the world, while someone else experiences death and they actually get so disappointed that they go into a depression and they end up killing themselves? Same event, two different responses. Thus comes the O, two different outcomes. So what we've learned how to do is get really, really good with the responses. How do we choose to respond to any given event that happens? E plus R equals O. How I also got really disciplined with managing my disappointments is, back in the day, my coach used to have me put on my health assessments, the parable of the sower. And so above my health assessments, I would have this little Bible verse, and I would remember that if I sort of planted the seed, everything else would take care of itself. And I don't know when these seeds are going to grow. I don't know the ground that they're going to grow on. I don't know the birds that are going to come eat these seeds. I don't know any of these things. All I know is the miracle working process is I continue to plant my seed. And my seed is my beautiful story. It's my heart. It's our program. If I keep sharing and if I keep planting, eventually the things are going to happen. And if I keep doing things like following up, which is called watering my seed, is giving it nourishment, eventually things are going to happen. And if I want more success, then all I need to do is plant more seeds. And within that story, I was reminded of basically another law, which is the law of averages. So there's three things that set coaches apart. I had to really understand this. And those three things are skill sets, our mindsets, and our action. Our skill set, our mindset, and our action. At the beginning of coaching, really throughout all of coaching, the one thing that we're constantly working on are our skills. At the beginning, our skills, can I just be honest? Our skills are not very good. Our skills suck. But as you do it over and over and over again, as you plant way more seeds, as you talk to way more people, eventually your skills start to improve, right? But at the beginning, they're not very good. So you may not have favorable outcomes. But I'm reminded if you do anything, eventually you're going to start to have what we call a ratio. So maybe if I do 10 health assessments, then maybe my ratio is 2 people get gone. Right? Maybe if I share Optavia and I share the business opportunity with 5 people, maybe 1 coach decides to get going. I don't know what people's ratios are. I just know if you do it enough times, you're going to have a ratio. And then eventually it's going to be like, well, if I talk to 4 people, then 1 person's going to get going. So it's education. And also I just got really excited because I was like, even if my ratios are terrible, if I just do more, eventually I'll become more successful. And so they would say things like, you can always speed up your success in this business by just doing more. So Priscilla, you could be amazing at doing health assessments, and maybe your ratio is for every I don't know, 1 to 2 people you talk to, maybe 1 person gets going because your skills are better. Maybe me as a brand new coach, maybe I have to talk to 10 people and maybe only 1 person gets going, and that's okay. The great thing is over a month's time, if we got into a little challenge and we said, who's going to actually sign up more people? And maybe you decided because you're so brilliant that you're just going to talk to a couple people and maybe you got a couple of clients that signed up. And I said, well, I'm willing to talk to 100 people. And now I get 10 clients to sign up. It's just a ratio. So what I learned at that convention was, as I was talking to all these people and as I was, hearing all these stories, and as I was seeing what was possible, if I went and served enough people, what was possible for my life and my family's life, I started thinking, I was like, man, if I could do this and if I could start earning enough, we never have to have these conversations and these fights that are driving us apart. And if I could start doing this enough, I could be at a point to where I never have to worry about what my wife does to bring in income because I can start living in abundance. And so I would start asking these people and they would say, we're global directors. We're global directors. And at that point, I didn't understand what that was. But they had these income disclosures all around the event. And I went down and said global director. And I went over to how much they were earning per month and it said $18,000 per month. And so I said, I'm going to be a global director. Why? Because of what that represented. If I could start earning at least $18,000 a month back then, now that represented freedom and peace of mind and no stress. I was stressed up to my eyeballs. And so I would ask them, what did you guys do to become global directors? And most of them would say, well, we sort of just shared our story with 5 people a day. And I would say, how long did that take you? And they would say like 3 years. I would say 3 years. Okay, well, if I double the work, then that would shorten my time to hopefully like a year. So I made a covenant with myself at that first convention that I'm going to talk to at least 10 people a day. At least 10 people a day are going to know my story. They're going to know my heart. They're going to know my passion, my conviction, and why I want to help either them or people that they know. And I don't care what happens, Priscilla, my house could catch on fire and I'm still going to talk to 10 people a day. My house could, it flooded. We have to move into an extended stay. I'm still going to talk to 10 people a day. Ezra gets sick, I'm still going to talk to 10 people a day. Why? Because of my ratios. My skills were not very good. But if my actions are higher, I can shorten time. I don't have 3 years. Remember, I'm trying to save a marriage. I want to do this as soon as possible. And of course, 8 months later, what do you think we became? Global directors. So your skill set, it's about doing it and getting better and practicing. Your mindset, it's about becoming conscious, understanding that most of the thoughts we have are non-serving beliefs. Why? Well, we've been conditioned this way most of the time. So you have to understand that most of the time that we're thinking we want to do something amazing, you're going to have a little voice over here that says, don't do that. What are that person going to say? They're going to think. Same reason why I didn't talk to that woman in that Target, because I didn't understand how to control my mind. So mindset, we're going to get really good with that. And then your actions. So one thing we can control is how many. Actions, all about numbers. How many people are you going to talk to? How many health assessments are you going to do? How many trainings are you going to get on? How many healthy happy hours are you going to do? How many people are you going to invite out to coffee? How many times are you going to get on Zoom? How many text messages did you send your mentor? Right? Like, it's always how many clients did you ask for referrals from? So your action, we can always shorten the gap of our success in anything that we do by doing more of it. So I just decided in my first, 6 years that I'm going to do way more than the average person because I want to see massive influence and success in a short amount of time. And what I wanted to do is, I was 31 when I started Priscilla. I said, by the time I'm 41, I want to be ultimately free. 10 years. And what I noticed at that convention was I was 31. I've been working in my professional career for probably 7 or 8 years. And in 7 and 8 years, we barely had success. And I was talking to people that worked actually 7 to 8 years in their businesses and were free. And so I said, if I'm going to do anything for 10 years, I might as well build freedom for myself and others. And I saw it right away. And that's why I turned to my coach after my second day of convention and said, you just got lucky because I've decided to do this. And I was serious.
Oh my gosh, that is awesome. So you actually answered some of like the questions of the answers for my last question. So I'm just going to go through this last question. But my last question to you is going to be, what are your suggestions for coaches who would like to grow their business? So there's, several brand new coaches here, and I'm recording because some couldn't get off work early. But what would be your suggestion for those coaches who would like to grow their business?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's quite a few. The very first, though, and it has to be this, is I would strongly suggest for them to figure out why this is important to them. Here's the thing about our business. We have such a beautiful business because of the people that we attract. We typically will attract nurturers, people that have this high ability and this high empathy level to where they want to pour into other people and they really, really want to serve. That is going to run out at some point in time. Because as we build our businesses and as we go and help more people, we're going to have to expand and grow. We're going to hit a ceiling of development. And how do you know you hit a ceiling? Is it starts to become a little challenging. And so if we're not connected, Priscilla, to what we want, And if that isn't bigger than what that ceiling of challenges is going to be, either a person is going to stay the exact same and plateau, or they're going to quit. This is why you see so many people come and you see so many people go, because they haven't expanded their vision for what they want for their lives, for the future, for the world, and their place in it. And then what we want to do is take what we want and now attach it to our business in this vehicle. How can we allow Optavia to bring this into light? And so it's married. And this is why we talk so much about living an integrated life. What most people will do with this business is they'll separate it and they'll compartmentalize it. And what really makes it work is when you integrate it into the life. So the first thing is really getting crystal clear on what you want. What do you want? You know, what have you been uniquely called to do? How are you supposed to show up in the world? You know, if that's income, what do you desire? And what I've learned is it's generally not the income, it's what it represents. So if that's planting churches, great, let's go do it. If that's, I don't have to take salary, and the salary that I did take, I can now go give that away to people that need it. Great, let's go do it. If that's leaving a legacy for my kids, great, let's go do it. What do you want and what is important to you? How are we going to actually take all these gifts that we've been given, and now what are we going to do with it? What do you want to do? And that's where it starts, because this business knows no limits. There's no ceilings. There's not, unfortunately, it's not like there's not enough need that's out there in the world for what we give and the solutions that we bring. And I say unfortunately because it is unfortunate, right? So like there's no limits to what we can create here. So the first thing of building something, anything of equity, is first we got to decide what we want. And then we have to visualize it and see it. And the next thing is we have to see ourselves doing it. Is it possible for you? Because even if you look at this chair that I'm sitting on right now, how did this chair get here? Someone had to see it, and someone had to see them doing it. This house that I'm in right now, how did it get here? It was nothing. It was dirt. This house was built before it was even built. How? Someone saw it. They decided they wanted to do it. And they saw that they could actually do it. If we think about our businesses, it's the same. How do we have thousands of coaches now? People ask me that, did I become an integrated presidential director when I hit integrated presidential, or did that happen way before? I hit integrated presidential director in 2013. It just didn't show up until 2015. I already saw it. This, Priscilla, I talk to you all the time and I tell you what's going to happen in the next couple of years for you, right? I already see it. Now you just got to walk the path and do it, right? But it's already been decided. So how do we build anything? How do we build a family? How do we build a marriage? It's one, we decide what we want. How do we want that to look? How do we want it to show up? And is it possible for me? That's the first thing. It always has to be that. The second thing that I would do is I would get very, very, very comfortable with becoming structured. What do I mean by that? There's two ways of becoming structured. One, I would start using my calendars. I would start doing everything in my life and I would start operating off of a calendar. I would start structuring out my days to where my day is already finished before it begun. I already know what Friday is going to look like. I already know what Saturday is going to look like. I already know the people that I'm going to start conversations with. I already know the coffee dates I'm going to have. In fact, I already know what February 13th is going to look like because I've already structured out my calendar and I live off of my calendar. If you looked at my calendar right now, it's telling Priscilla it's 6 o'clock. It's a little hairy. Why? Because it's family time. every Thursday from 3 to 9 is family time. We could go to April 17th of next year, and I already have the rocks in my schedule for the things that are most important and for the things that I need to do, for the people that I'm going to follow up with, things like that. It's already in my calendar. It's already been decided before that day already happens. So I would do that. The other thing is I would get very, very good at doing what we call leading from the future and acting in the now. Now that I know what I want, I'm going to come back to what we call my current reality. And every single day, I'm going to have at least 4, 5, 6 action steps that I'm going to do. Now, am I going to feel like doing these action steps every single day? I can assure you you're not. But being successful has nothing to do with how you feel. It only has to do with working in structure. Let me say this again. Reaching your goals and building the business that you want has nothing to do about how you feel. It only has to do with working in structure, meaning I'm here every single day. I am going to do these 4, 5, 6 things. Why? Because if I do them, and if I do them over time, eventually, where will I go? Here. But if I start to deviate from these 4, 5, 6 things, now I've just ruined the miracle working process. And now what's going to happen is something called cognitive dissonance. I'm literally, my brain is going to start to tell me that I never even wanted this to begin with, and it's not that important to me. This is what your clients do, by the way. When they start with you, their whole motive oftentimes is based off of emotions. They're tired of something and they're ready to run away from it, right? I'm tired of not being able to fit into these size 6s, so now I'm ready to make a decision. I'm tired of not being able to play with my kids, so now I'm ready to make a decision, right? It's all based off of feelings. It's what most people do as human beings. So what starts to happen is we give them what we call action steps. And we say, do these action steps every single day, and eventually guess where they'll get to. But what starts to happen once things start to get a little bit challenging? What starts to happen actually when they start to see some success? What starts to happen when they may not be getting the support they feel like they're supposed to get? What starts to happen when maybe their schedule changes and the boss says you're going to work a little bit more? They neglect to do these simple things. They think they need to wake up every single day and the world has to be perfect in order for them to do it. And because they don't feel good, they stop doing what? The action. No action, no miracles. So we don't operate like that. We learn to work in structure. I'm going to do these things not because I actually feel like it, but because I have a higher want. And that want is, what do I want? What do I want? What do I want? And what do I want more? And so we're going to do these things every single day, not because the world is perfect and I feel great today. It's because what I want more is more important. So I'm going to do this. You're going to hear us talk about it. We're going to do this anyway. We say, do it anyway. Do the work, do it anyway, because eventually over time, you're going to get here if you do that and not ruin your momentum. So that's definitely one of the things Dr. A called the structural tension. Chapter 3 and chapter 4, Dr. A's Habits of Health book really helps us with that. And almost every chapter in our workbook helps us with it as well. They really speak from a client standpoint, but it's no different. The way that we reach amazing goals is we work in structure. We do it anyway. We work in structure, by the way, in many areas of our lives. So I would say, what's your goal for being a parent? And we would have all these philosophical ideas of why we're so inspired to be a parent to our kids, right? And then we come back to the current reality. And every single day we do things, action steps, to meet this goal of being the sort of parent that we want. Well, what happens if you are sick for that day? Would you not feed your kids? What happens if the cat dies that day? Would you not still give emotional support? you still do these things. That's called working in structure. You're doing it anyway, even though you don't feel good. So we learn to do the same thing in our businesses. Once I learned that, I said, I'm never going to ruin the momentum in my business, because momentum is everything. Momentum, by the way, everything happens in a rhythm, Priscilla. And what's funny about this is this how me and Priscilla talk, right? You guys are just kind of getting a little glimpse of what our conversations are like. But everything happens in a rhythm. Life moves in a rhythm. Success moves in a rhythm. Your client's success moves in a rhythm. The world moves in a rhythm. Clock moves in a rhythm. Your heartbeat moves in a rhythm. Momentum is so important. That's why when you catch momentum in this business, please do not let it go. What do we say to our clients? When you get in fat burn, you're in a rhythm. Please do not jack that up, because momentum is key. Now, what happens once you break momentum? Know what that's called? A heart attack. Why? We just broke the rhythm. And if you have a heart attack in your body, now we're in trouble. And what clients and coaches and just people in general do is they break their rhythm. They literally have aneurysms and heart attacks in their businesses. It's amazing, because they're breaking the rhythm, because they think in order to do these action steps, I have to actually feel good when you don't. So I would learn how to really work in structure. I would get crystal clear on what I want. I would be talking to my support team, text messaging my mentor at least 2 to 3 times a day. I used to do it 4 to 5 times a day, but I would do something and I would say, hey, Karen, I just did this. What do you think? Hey, Karen, I'm thinking about doing a healthy happy hour. What do you think? Hey, Karen, I just talked to this person. What do you think? I would be doing that a lot. I would be on every Monday night training, and I would go to every destination event that I could. I have not seen one coach be as successful as they have told me they wanted to be, Priscilla, without going to things like national convention, without going to things like our summits. It is, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I haven't seen it in almost 7 years as a coach. So any training, especially if it's a destination, a big one, I would make sure to be there, and I would create a community. You know, so much of what we do is based off of community.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, guys, Jamil just gave us pearls of wisdom. You know, I recorded this call and I'm going to put it in our Leaders in Progress Messenger group. And yeah, Jamil, thank you so much for sharing all this
How
with
cool
us.
was that?
Yeah. So yeah, guys, like he said, the big events are really important. I think that's where my eyes really opened up on our first big event too. And ever since, I've not missed a single event, you know, and every time I go, I come back more empowered, like, you know, the business is growing and things like that. So we have our next event's going to be in LA, actually, in April. There's some qualifications for that, but I'm going to talk to you guys about that. We have a long way to get there. You'll qualify. You know, we do the work and stuff. And yes, I encourage you all to come to this event in LA in April. So thank you, Jamil.
Priscilla, can I just say one more thing? Because I think
course.
this is important. You know, I've never seen anything like what we have. Never. And as I talk to more and more business people, it's apparent to me that we have something that's really special. When you speak from a nurturing standpoint, there's 2 sides of this business. One, there's transactional, when we talk about how many and numbers and things like that, how much. And then there's transformational. And why I love what we do is because we take people who are needing something, and they start here, and we put them on this conveyor belt called Optavia, and they go through and they work with their coaches. And then towards the end of this, there's transformation. Everyone that starts with us and follows what we do, they are different. Is there anyone that hasn't changed? I mean, it's so cool, right? So I love that part, but I also love the transactional piece too, because we have something that if we get into an abundance mindset, I believe we can change the world. I really do. Because we can get to a place to where we can start serving at such a higher level and such a higher calling. For example, we have done, when you get to a place to where you have way more than enough and you can just start giving, that's incredible. So my first vision was I need to start earning $18,000 a month. That happened relatively quick as a coach. And then my next vision was, 30,000 a month. At that point, we earned more in a month than my wife did spend as a teacher all year. And now that has even more than doubled than that. So it's just like every single year that we've been a coach, we have earned at least $120,000 more than the year before. And so I think being in a creative space, in a creative vehicle like this, where you're able to do so well because you're doing so much good out there. And then once you start to move to a state of abundance, man, there's so much that you can do. So from both the transactional side of what we do and the transformational side, there's so much attractiveness to be able to give that to more people. And just think about the things that we talked about tonight. I didn't know any of that stuff. It's like Jedi mind tricks type of stuff. That's what our coaches get for free. Now I think about people that are out there who want to know these things, but they aren't even taught that. And we can bring them into a safe space to where they're loved. They're going to have a tremendous community. And then we really start shifting things. So, it's just, we have such a beautiful opportunity that is literally open to anyone that will do the work. That's what I love about it. So thank you guys for having